So we laugh about internet porn. It's funny, and I want to acknowledge that by giving you the link to the Avenue Q song "The Internet Is for Porn," which is funny, undeniably funny. And again, I did put a warning. It's optional to watch because it's dirty. It is dirty because internet porn is dirty. I mean, porn is dirty. Maybe porn is the very definition of what we mean by dirty, pornographic. So porn is funny, and internet porn is funny, and there's no denying it, and there's no reason to not acknowledge that it's funny. And the thing about funny things is they're funny until they're not. Um, and I wanted to give you something here. I had an interesting experience preparing materials for this class. I thought that, if we're going to talk about internet computer digital challenges to ethics in a Jonasian way, in the spirit of Hans Jonas, in the spirit of this idea that technologies, specific digital technology here, computer technology, that it can actually pose us with novel ethical questions because technology brings us into novel situations in which it may be that our old ideas about ethics or old ethical principles, old ethical frameworks may no longer be sufficient. In the spirit of that, I thought, when putting together materials for this class, that internet porn is such a novelty, such a new thing for human beings, that I thought it would be something that would be interesting to talk about. And in looking for substantive philosophical debate and comment on this, it just so happened that it was conservative theologians, philosophers, commentators who really were taking it most seriously, and I suppose it's not in retrospect much of a surprise. So that the essay I've given you by David B. Hart is extremely conservative in its outlook. It is written by a Christian theologian, I believe he is. Uh, so I'm not trying to say there's only one viewpoint on this, but it's interesting that it's conservative people who seem to be taking this novel situation seriously. And I do believe that, just neutrally, objectively speaking, that it is a novel situation. I'm not going to say that, along with Hart, that we actually live in a pornography culture. That might be too strong for me, but that we live in a culture, our culture now is a culture in which we're kind of living through an experiment. That it is simply a fact that pornography has not been as readily available to human beings ever in the history of our species. I mean, that is, I think, simply a fact. That is, that the internet um, makes pornography freely available to anyone who has access to the internet, which is a lot of people in an advanced, at least a wealthy society like our own. That is simply a fact, and what we make of it is another question entirely. Clearly, for Hart, I don't think has any sense of humor when it comes to pornography. I mean, I don't think there's any Avenue Q in David B. Hart in terms of pornography. I do think that he thinks it's a disaster. That is, that the free availability of pornography and the protection that we give it, the Supreme Court has given it, I suppose, in terms of calling it protected free speech, he thinks is just a complete mistake, a terrible, tragic mistake. Um, and that really rests upon, I think, this claim he makes here. If I can make it bigger so we can actually read it. That right here, where he says the damage that pornography damage that pornography can do is by no means negligible. Uh, that is, I suppose, if he has an argument here, that's not just an argument about taste. I mean, one can say, like, you know, one argument could just be from taste. That is, pornography is in bad taste, and if you're going on the internet, you would most of us would really like to be protected from things that are in bad taste. For instance, I use ad block and have used it for years because I find ads advertising to be ugly and in bad taste. And I really love ad block, and it seems like it's always in threat. That is, you can actually have an internet browsing experience that keeps ads out. That's a very strong thing for me, like in terms of the aesthetic experience of being on the internet. It just makes it less ugly. And one could say that the same is true for pornography. As far as I know, YouTube has never allowed pornography. Maybe it's somewhere on the vast, thing that is YouTube, but I don't see it. And I was always glad about that. That is, it made YouTube something much more useful. And the fact that there wasn't pornography on it just made, you don't have to avoid the porn. I mean, it makes it actually a better experience and a more usable thing. And I think it was probably a really important decision that they made. Now, there's a lot of other things on YouTube that are incredibly disturbing, much more disturbing than pornography, I think. But that's another issue, I guess. Maybe it's not another issue, but it raises a whole other thing. But the claim that pornography can do damage goes way beyond, say, my claim, perhaps, that pornography is a matter of bad taste. And no, he's gone beyond that and said that pornography can do damage. That yeah, I mean, here I think he's just saying what I've been saying here on the bottom of this page, where he says, nor has the availability and profusion of pornography in modern Western culture any historical precedent. I think that's absolutely true. I don't know. I think it's undeniable, actually. The question is, what are the ethical consequences of that? Are there actually ethical consequences of that? And if there are they good or are they bad? I suppose that's something that obviously everyone has to decide for themselves, but it's quite clear that conservative Christian intellectual like Hart believes that the ethical consequences are negative or damaging. But what is his? I guess it comes down to a fundamental question about whether you think that pornography itself is damaging to a human being. The use of pornography on the part of an individual, and the presence of pornography in a culture. That is, we can choose whether or not to use pornography as individuals, but we can't choose whether we live in a culture in which pornography is freely available. And if we think that pornography has negative effects on people, well, then we're in a situation where our society is being changed in negative ways that may impact on us, even if we don't, use pornography as individuals. So it's a big issue here. But I think it's well worth thinking about. That is whether you think that pornography is a danger and an evil. Whether you think pornography is a harmless thing, whether you believe that it's a First Amendment issue or a free speech issue, and that even if you think that pornography is ethically wrong, but not something that we would want to restrict because of our dedication to free speech, just sort of behind all this, still, I think it's something that is to be something that is worth considering.